Jane Velez Mitchell with Jane Unchained. I am here with two extraordinary filmmakers, Mick and Kate McIntyre, the makers of Kangaroo, a love-hate story, which is shaking up Australia. In fact, Mick, you are in Australia. Tell us about your film, Kangaroo, why you call it a love-hate story and the impact it's having.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks for having us, and thanks for what you're doing for the animals. Look, this film has shocked a lot of people, like it shocked us as Australians. We had no idea what was going on to our kangaroos. Every night, commercial shooters go out and shoot and bludgeon to death our national icon to sell to people overseas for meat and skins. We had no idea, and people quite rightly are shocked at what they're learning about Australia's treatment of kangaroos.
Well, it's horrifying. And in fact, we've got a trailer that I want to show. Let's take a look and then we'll discuss on the other side.
If I hear a shot or I see a spotlight, I grab my camera. Someone has to witness it.
It's the largest land-based slaughter of mammals.
They can't be farmed, so they have to be shot en masse in the wild. It can't be regulated.
It's a dirty secret.
It's a shame a lot of people in Australia don't love the kangaroos because they are such a great animal. They really are. Yeah.
Wow, that is so powerful. Kate, why does this woman say, well, you have to shoot them because you can't farm them? I mean, what a ridiculous choice. Like, oh, because human beings can't farm them and turn them into some profit icon by industrialization, then we can go out and shoot them all?
Yeah, actually, she's making a point about a lot of people are sold the idea that kangaroos are farmed, that they're not a wild animal. So, I mean, that's obviously, you know, a complex issue as far as the treatment of animals are concerned. But this is our native wildlife. And there's no, like with any commercial sale of wildlife, the wildlife always does incredibly badly because, you know, you have to produce the animals every day so that they can be shipped and sold around the world. And this is like shooters going in at night into the wilds of Australia, killing the mothers, bludgeoning their babies, killing their fathers, all in the same, they're all in the mobs together. They're quite a family animal. They stay together a long time. The joeys are with their mothers for up to 18 months and they're often left abandoned. So she was really making the point that this is a horrific industry. It's happening every day and it's unsustainable.
Well, why can't we just leave them alone? I was in Australia many years ago and I did see some kangaroos. I think I was at the point where I wasn't quite evolved enough to realize that if I'm going anywhere that has a cluster of kangaroos to be seen, unless it's a sanctuary, there's probably some exploitation involved. But I remember I was quite taken with them and fell in love with them. Why can't we just let them be? Why do they have to be gunned? I mean, why are people gunning them down? Under what pretext?
Yeah, well, look, it's a really good question, and that's something we realised we had to uncover in the film, and hence we called the film a love-hate story, because on the one hand, we celebrate them, we put them on the tail of our national airline, Qantas, they're on our coat of arms, you know, we use their symbol in so many ways for our tourism, and yet, as we're talking about, every night people go out and shoot them to get rid of them, as if they're an animal that needs to be gotten rid of, not appreciated. So there's this love-hate thing going on in Australia that we had no idea of, and we had to try and find out where that all came from. And it really stems back to when when white people first settled this country, that the wild animals here in Australia were always seen as a problem. There wasn't even a concept that we could coexist with them. So unfortunately, Jane, it seems to have been passed down from generation to generation that instead of, as you say, appreciating this animal and learning how to coexist with them, we just somehow seem to think that they're ours to exploit. And now this multi-million-dollar industry has been set up, which of course then drives more people to want to kill them to sell their products overseas.
Now, how are they selling them? Because usually the United States of America is involved in some way, shape, or form. Us consumers, in co-signing, underwriting, and co-conspiring in this mass killing by buying stuff. So what stuff are Americans buying that is causing other people in Australia to go shoot these beautiful and gentle animals so they can be turned into what?
Yeah, so America is the second to largest trader, as you suggested, and importing wildlife parts. Kangaroos are the largest killing of terrestrial mammals in the world. So it's a huge issue, and parts are coming into America. They're coming in as pet food. They're coming in as leather, soccer boots. A lot of soccer cleats are made out of kangaroo. And I mean, I don't think Americans are necessarily aware of a couple of things. They're not aware that there's sometimes called K leather is even kangaroo leather. So if you're buying soccer cleats, you might not even know that you're adding to the industry. It's in the leather's used in fashion labels. It's used in things like car seats and steering wheel leathers. It's used in shoes, and people also just eat the meat as a human consumption sort of meat. So you have to.
I've never heard of kangaroo. There's a big controversy about wet markets because, conspiracy theories aside, it's very likely that the pandemic that is destroying our economies around the world started in a wet market, a live market. And it's certainly, undoubtedly, wherever it started with the abuse by humans of animals, kept stressed and tortured. So the idea that people would eat kangaroo meat in the United States, I can't even put my mind around that. But then again, a lot of people are not aware that there are wet markets. You're saying people in the United States are eating kangaroo meat?
Yeah, it's very disturbing given what's been going on with this pandemic, that the Australian government continues to promote and continues to endorse the trade of Australian wildlife. And it continues to endorse that it's okay to eat kangaroo meat. What we learnt in the film is that contamination of this wild kangaroo meat, this bush meat, is unavoidable. There's nothing they can do because it's wildlife. They are full of pathogens and full of E. coli and full of salmonella. So I'm not saying that all of the meat is contaminated, but some of it is, and that's unavoidable. And the government can't hide behind that and so what we're hoping the film will do is awaken people to the fact that this is a trade in Australian wildlife. And given what's going on with the pandemic at the moment, that is a real concern for human health.
What we need is a law in the United States that bans the importation of kangaroo, anything kangaroo. This is what we need. And I work on that.
Lucky in California, there is a ban on importing kangaroo parts and products. You shouldn't be able to get any kangaroo body parts in California. And that's been a law that's been in the state since the 70s. Unfortunately, none of the other states have taken up that law. And that might be something that people could look at in America, that to wake up to the idea that they're getting this live kangaroo meat, they're getting it to feed their pets, and they're, wearing it for soccer cleats. That's totally unnecessary now when so many good synthetics are available. It's an unnecessary product for people to actually have in their lives.
This is why I advocate veganism in all things, because everything is a slippery slope. If you start saying, well, I'm going to be vegan for food, but look what happens. Look what happens to these animals. And now it seems that Australia has got some real problems when it comes to its treatment of animals in general. I'm a big fan of Animals Australia. Animals Australia is an incredible organization that fights against the live export of sheep from Australia all the way to the Middle East and other places where these animals are literally roasted alive. And just today, I learned that Animal Australia valiantly fought to stop the export of 50,000 sheep to Kuwait, and that they got an exemption. The Australian government gave the shipping an exemption to allow 50,000 sheep to be shipped in this heat. So many of them die. They're living in their own waste. What on earth is wrong with Australia when it comes, and listen, I'm not pointing the finger just Australia. We're just as bad. We're roasting animals alive, depopulating them. We are the most sadistic species ever invented. So the United States is giving you a run for your money, I assure you.
Yeah, well, look, as an Australian, I'm ashamed. You know, I've spent the last 5 years making this film about this issue about the kangaroos and how they're treated, and I carry a real shame now because, and as you point out, Australia is in the headlines for all the wrong reasons at the moment. I mean, this is not how we imagined that we would think of Australia, as being a nation of animal cruelty. I mean, I grew up thinking that Australia had all these amazing anti-cruelty laws and was good to their animals. But since making this film, I realised that that's all a facade, and that people rightly should be very, very, very angry at Australia and the decisions they're making about how they treat their animals. And, you know, I hope that people listening to this will realise and you know, perhaps give feedback to the Australian government on what they think of how Australia treats their animals. And, you know, tourism is such...
I don't think they care. I was part of a disruption when I believe it was the foreign secretary, or I believe her name was Julie Bishop, came to the United States to speak, and we disrupted her presentation over the live export. And I actually got a one-on-one meeting with her. Boy, she's as tough as shoe leather. I didn't see a lot of compassion coming out of her. And then she flippantly said, well, she justified live export by saying, we're providing protein to the third world, and then sauntered off. I did not see or detect an ounce of empathy. I saw a purely political person who was trying to figure out how to get out of the conversation she was having, who was annoyed that her event was disrupted by us. And so were the business people. A lot of them Australians who were gathered to hear her. And I have never been prouder of disrupting something than that, because what is happening to these sheep is morally reprehensible. It is a stain. It is a stain. And the fact that she can't even see that. And I said to her, have you looked at the footage? Because the footage it's something out of Dante's Inferno with these poor animals stuck on these ships. And she said, I'm aware of the issue. You know, so.
Well, you know, I think Australians, they saw that footage and they were they were also deeply shocked. So many people in Australia are deeply shocked by the treatment of animals in Australia. And unfortunately, and what keeps happening is we get exemptions, because kangaroos are actually protected by our federal government. But what happens is we just get exemption after exemption pretty much for any human activity. So humans seem to just win all the time. And that's where we're stuck. We're just stuck on humans.
Except that humans are going to lose now because look at the fires. Because we are so rough on wildlife and we treat any wildlife as vermin, and that I didn't make that word up. I have squirrels around here that neighbors refer to as vermin. And I said, we're the vermin. But because of that, now we are threatened with extinction. Amazon fires, destroying 20 Manhattans since the first of the year, and huge fires, as we know, in Australia. And didn't your prime minister go on vacation during all of that? Like there was nothing to see here?
Yeah, I mean, the fires, it's been the Australian fires really were a wake-up call. And I mean, again, getting back to how badly affected the kangaroos are in Australia, I mean, the state of New South Wales lost over 20% of native bushland, which is kangaroo habitat. So not only were the kangaroos directly affected by the fires, but we lost 20% of their habitat as well. So, and yet the government continues to endorse and promote the commercial killing of kangaroos. So there just doesn't seem to be any sense to what's going on. I will point out, though, that some recent polling has been done, and it's very heartening to see that Australians are starting to be much more empathetic to the plight of the kangaroo, because people are being exposed to what's going on, and we hope that the film has played some part in that, because the film goes into a lot of detail about some of the issues that have got us to this point of the treatment of kangaroos. So the polling has shown that Australians are starting to be much more concerned about the future for our wildlife.
We are talking to the incredible filmmakers of Kangaroo, A Love Story. You can watch it on Amazon Prime. Kangaroo, A Love Story. Not to be confused with Kangaroo. There's another film, it's some kind of crime drama or whatever called Kangaroo. This is a different kind of crime drama. This is Kangaroo, A Love-Hate Story. So you can check it out on Amazon Prime. You can check it out on iTunes, on Google Play. It's everywhere. You need to watch it. And consumers need to rise up. There is now obviously ginormous online realtors. We don't need to name names, but if we catch them selling kangaroo leather, that's really a place where you could start a campaign. Are you doing any of that? I mean, what can people do? What can people do? We can watch the movie. We can boycott Australia. I mean, look, I went there. I had a great time. I loved Australia. It was beautiful many decades ago. But, money talks. At the end of it, if it becomes, it's so short-sighted. Australia is beautiful because it is this incredible nature. It's like a giant nature preserve aside from the big cities. It's so beautiful, as is New Zealand. But if you destroy that, then what is there? You know what I'm saying? It's like if you destroy the very thing that draws people there, that makes people want to live there, what have you done? You've destroyed yourself, And so to me, okay, the people of Australia need to look at the people they're electing. If the government ultimately does reflect the views of the people, and if they elect people who say, hey, there's giant wildfires, I'm going on vacation. We're sending 50,000 sheep to be fried to death on a death trip to Kuwait where they're going to be tortured when they get on the other side. If they're electing people who are completely morally bankrupt, what does that say about the people?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there's so many exemptions in Australia for wildlife. There's so many exemptions for animals. And it is a rise up of the people. I think people have to have, like in all current sort of with the Black Lives Matter, we have to become an activist that lives the way that your values fall. I think that we're really being asked now to say, what are your values and what are you going to do about it? You have to really act. And, I think for Americans and kangaroos, you have to notice that, where do these animals come from? They're not just on your plate. They're not just in your dog food. Where actually does this meat come from? And do you want to be part of that? Do you want to be part of, if California has no kangaroo products, do you want your state to be like that and call for that? Do you want your kid to wear soccer cleats made out of kangaroo skin, like a beautiful, we're so lucky in Australia that we live in this huge, really amazing country full of, some of the last great wildlife in the world. And I think that the ridiculousness of it is that people come to Australia to see kangaroos, and at the same time we're just cutting them up every night to sell. Who's talking to who and how is this working? We can't trust our governments to look after our lives anymore. We really have to be incredibly active.
We really do. And every decision isn't just a consumer choice, it is a moral choice. And we have to realize that. So I see, take a crystal ball, a campaign associated with your film, like action points, because I would love to take any action points I could. Sign a petition, go to a virtual town hall, go to a demonstration when the quarantine fades, if that ever happens. Do you have a campaign that is associated with this where people can take action?
Yeah, we actually, as a result of the film, we actually, the social impact campaign that followed the film, we actually helped set up a not-for-profit called Kangaroos Alive. So people can go to that website, kangaroosalive.org. And yeah, they can learn about the social impact campaign that started because of the film. And there are some really impressive victories already that we've had from that social impact campaign. Mostly in Europe, we've had some big name fashion brands that have stopped using kangaroo leather, such as Versace and Gucci and Diodora. We've had some supermarkets we've had the largest supermarket chain in France that has stopped selling kangaroo meat. So the social impact campaign is working. And now, being on your program, we're hoping that a similar social impact campaign will have traction in the United States as well, because as Kate said, the US is currently the second largest importer of kangaroo products after Europe. And that will shock a lot of people. And that, as Kate has already pointed out, have a look at what's in your pet food, have a look at where your soccer shoes are made, have a look at some of the fashion labels. And yeah, Americans can make some really strong consumer choices.
Well, for example, because we know sometimes that they disguise things because they want to sell bad stuff. Is kangaroo disguised? I mean, we know, for example, palm oil, which is very destructive and isn't about 50% of all our products, is very hard to avoid, but I'm making pains to try to avoid it. Sometimes it comes under other names and you find out you bought it when you thought you didn't. Is it the same with kangaroo? Like meat? You said K-leather. K-leather, kangaroo leather. So, well, first of all, don't buy any leather. It's ridiculous. Why are you wearing a dead animal on your feet or whatever? But what about like in food? Is it disguised as anything? I've never looked at it.
I mean,
seen kangaroo.
There's a lot of research we need to do still in America as to where it's going into all the places. I mean, when we started this campaign, no one knew anything. And we were asking around the film. So the great American story in the film was that California keeps the ban. But on from that, we know it's in really major soccer boot labels. So you can look when you're buying soccer cleats like Nike and Adidas and Lotto and things, these labels all use kangaroo leather.
What about a campaign against, and by the way, we invite any of those brand names on anytime. I can't independently confirm sitting here what leather's in what, but can we start I would think targeting a particular, this is how they got very successful against fur. They would target a particular brand. Look at Michael Kors, okay? Michael Kors was sent many years, photos and images and videos of fur animals being skinned alive, of being anally electrocuted, of just the torture that you can't even look, chewing off their own arms, zip, nothing. Well, at a certain point, he had a big event at the Metropolitan Museum, the High Society, Citadel, and there were all the fashionistas there, and the animal activists invaded. They unveiled a giant banner. They played audio of animals being skinned alive. They jumped on stage. They created a chaos, nonviolent but confrontational. A couple of weeks later, guess who announced that he was giving up fur? Michael Kors. And we applaud him for that. So, same kind of thing. What about targeting a specific company and making that connection? We don't have to think of the company now, but I think that could be very, very effective. That's how PETA does. They take them off one by one, not as a group where there's no responsibility, but specifically targeting one particular company.
Well, you watch this space because that's underway at the moment, Jane, and we're happy to share the information as it comes to hand. But that is happening now. There are some big brands that are about to be targeted for their use in kangaroo. And again, I go back to the success we've had with Versace and Diodora and Gucci. These are big brands, and the same thing happened to them when they realized what's going on with the baby joeys that are taken from their mother's pouches every night and bashed against the bull bar of the car. They don't want to be part of an industry that does that every night. So I think watch this space. I think it's going to happen in America. I think that's basically, the brutality of baby joeys on their hands. They don't want it. And I think so watch this space. I know that there's already a campaign going on with Chewy.com, which is a online pet food retailer. There's a big campaign going on. People can find that. And there's a huge petition going on to stop Chewy.com from selling kangaroo meat on their online pet food site.
And we can buy Chewy.com on anytime. Yes. Okay. All right. Well, great. You've thought of it, and I want to applaud you. You guys are my heroes. I met you when you were just starting, or you were just getting this film underway, and you were very determined. And I know the courage, determination, sacrifice it takes to do something like this. I applaud you. There are so many heroes in Australia. As I mentioned, Animals Australia is one of my favorite groups. They fight relentlessly and valiantly as they're fighting for sheep and cows, and you are fighting for the kangaroos. And so there are so many wonderful, wonderful people, others fighting for the koala bears. And, you know, it's no one country. Every country has its horrors. I mean, what they're doing right now, depopulating, because the slaughterhouses a lot of them have shut down because of being hotbeds of COVID-19, so that the farmers have to kill their own animals. And they're using methods that are being falsely described in the media as euthanasia, when the video is the worst video you've ever seen. It will give you nightmares of pigs screaming at the top of their lungs as they are asphyxiated, and then anyone who survives, they're shot in the head. I mean, it's the stuff of a slasher movie. And the news media, the mainstream news media, calls it euthanasia. That's a lie. So what we are doing is speaking truth to power, because people don't want to be robbed of their fairy tales. They want to be able to do whatever they're doing and keep doing it and wear whatever they want and tell themselves they're good people and they love animals and everything's okay. And so dropping these truth bombs on them and showing them what is really happening, for example, for you to get your cleats, is this worth it? I mean, it's beyond comprehension. I'm embarrassed to be a human being. I just want to say you guys are extraordinary, and you give me faith in humanity. You really do.
We really, thanks for that, Jane. And there's a lot of great people in Australia working for the kangaroos, a lot of small organizations and individuals who just love the kangaroos. And we're really heartened to see the new polls to show that so many Australians now are concerned about the welfare of kangaroos. And let's hope that their voice rises loudly, more and more loudly across the world, so that, you know, the whole world treasures now. With the wildlife we have left in the world is everybody's. Although it's resident in Australia, it's like a world treasure. And we really want Americans and Europeans and everyone to feel like, boy, we've got so little left now. Let's all make a difference, and let's all protect the Amazon. Let's all protect the oceans. Let's all protect the kangaroos. We really need to all get in there for each other and for the wildlife we have left.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's our vision that we learn that we can coexist with our magnificent icon, the kangaroo, that we can coexist with our wildlife. And, you know, it's proven in Africa that you can coexist with wildlife. And it is our vision that Australia, on all levels of government and all levels of society, accept this magnificent animal for what it is, our national icon, and let it be, and let it live in coexistence with us, and work out ways to make that happen. Because right now we won't have a future kangaroo population unless we do something. But we're confident that we can get there. We're confident that we can learn to appreciate this animal, and so we can get rid of the hate part of our title. It'll just be Kangaroo: A Love Story, rather than this love-hate that we have going on.
Well, I want to thank you. And once again, kangaroosalive.org if you want to get involved in the campaign to save kangaroos. But first, watch the film. It's on Amazon, Google Play, iTunes. Kangaroo: A Love-Hate Story. I want to thank you so much, filmmakers. You are my heroes. Keep at it and keep us posted.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks so much, Jane.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.